Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today in the studio, we have a wonderful young aspiring artist in GL Richardson. And welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to explore a little bit. I always get excited when we find young whippersnappers like this. GL, what I'd like to do is let's start a little bit about where are you from, where you grew up, what inspired you to become an artist. Tell us about if you've had any school or if you're self-taught. Let's go through that first.
Sounds good. I'm from Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, originally. And I grew up in the suburbs, and pretty uninteresting, honestly. But had parents that really wanted me to focus early on, and they pushed me in high school to figure out what I was going to do. And so that boiled down to, I'd had an interest in art through elementary school to high school. But they'd kind of pushed me away from that, saying you're not going to make, money as an artist. And so what's the next best thing? You see a lot of artists resort to advertising, right? And so I decided in high school that I was going to go pursue creative advertising. And that took me to Missouri, University of Missouri. Their journalism program is pretty top notch.
So you're doing like graphic design?
More art direction.
Art direction.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a distinction there between the two, whereas graphic design is more executional and art direction is more conceptual. In undergrad, it doesn't really make a difference. You're doing a lot of the same stuff.
Right.
But I decided to pursue my education into a master's back in Virginia at Virginia Commonwealth University, and pursued art direction there as well. And then graduated and went straight into advertising out in San Francisco. Got there quick because I like to put that, that's in the past.
From east to west in no time at all.
Yeah. So moved around a lot, but ended up back in Richmond for a little while, for 2 years.
That's an interesting story. I'm glad you told us that. And I want to ask this question. You're actually a cowboy that paints cowboy art. So what turned you into cowboy from Virginia and drove you to the West? Let's hear that story.
All right, yeah. My dad is really, really into Westerns. And so I grew up watching a lot of Western, like Hollywood stuff. And always, gorgeous, right? Like it draws a lot of people to the West. Hollywood does a good job with that. But what I actually ended up experiencing is very different from that, and I can't say that is necessarily what took me into ranching. It was more of just a pursuit of realness and human qualities that we've kind of left behind as a society, and I was really missing those things in advertising. Advertising was I wasn't seeing a whole lot of that. It was pretty devoid of humanity. That sounds terrible, but of more base drives and skill sets that we don't use anymore. It was a lot of computer time.
Yeah.
So that I would say that seeing a lack of that and wanting that in my life is what pushed me to the West. It wasn't really the romanticism as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when listening to that, it reminds me of two artists that Blue Rain has really worked with a lot in the past, and that's Billy Shank, where he started in Kansas and moved to the East Coast, worked out of New York, and then found his passion in Western heritage, actually becoming a cowboy himself and a national champion.
Accomplished.
Yes.
Yes. I've seen the buckles.
Yeah, those buckles are cool. Oh. And then also, you remind me a little bit of the journey of Jim Bogle, who him and his wife started off in graphic commercial design. And then Jim just found a passion to go on his own and stuff. But it seems like kind of a similar story between the two.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
You see a lot of artists transition away from the graphic design and art direction into more pure endeavors, it seems.
So what are the specific things you like about ranching or being in the cowboy genre?
Oh, man. Like I already touched on it a little bit. It's a lot of skill sets that are still very much used, and just the general population is not aware of them. Just working with your hands and feeling like feeling connected to our ancestors through physical labor. Like that is something that really, really stuck with me, working every day like that. And then there's other things about, like being out on a large piece of property, a large piece of land, like double the size of San Francisco, which is where the ranch that I worked on, was double the size of San Francisco, and I moved there from San Francisco. So being on a piece of property that big with 5 people, that leaves you a lot of time to think and grow and kind of have this internal marination that all the external noise, I think, blocks for a lot of people in society now. Like you've got so many distractions that you can decide to pursue instead of working inside. And so that's one of the things that
So when you were ranching it up.
Oh, big time.
When you were ranching it
Heavy
up.
ranching.
Were you sketching and drawing and finding things that inspired you on the ranch?
I was. But now that I look back at those pieces, they don't hold even half of kind of the internal fortitude that I'm trying to put into a lot of the pieces convey now. And that kind of boils down to the fact that when you grow, right, that growth doesn't happen all at once, and it continues for years after that point when you are feeling the growth, or when you're experiencing that change. And so I still feel like I'm learning things from an experience that is now about 2 years behind me. It's kind of miraculous in that way.
Yeah. Well, Joe, I was raised kind of ranching myself.
Yeah, you told me.
And cows and chickens and pigs and whatever, growing alfalfa, tending to sheep. I remember at about 18 telling my grandpa, I'm not going to live like this. It's too freaking hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. It's hard work. But you're right. You appreciate the land. You appreciate hard work. I think a lot of artists that I end up representing have a connection to that as well. I think about Jim Bogle especially. Mm-hmm. If you look at the paintings with the big hands, and it's all about work.
Yeah.
We provide for ourselves, and we're ultimately responsible. But it is hard work, and
yes.
to appreciate that and go that way is amazing. What brought you to Santa Fe?
There became a fork in the road, and it was either continue ranching or move on, basically. And I really owe a lot to my mentor, boss, and friend, Duke Phillips. We were out. I can't remember what exactly we were doing. We were going out to the end of a pasture and checking a fence that had been down or something like that. And I'd been out there for over a year and 2 months or so. And he stopped the truck and he was like, now's the time. You got to make the decision.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick around here or are you going to move on? And he knew, like I'd been painting, like I already said, and drawing while I was out at the ranch. Knew that it was a aspiration of mine, and I had to make that decision.
So there are a lot of people in this genre of Western heritage that paint beautiful paintings of Western themes and Western styles, or the romanticizing of the West, but yet they've never dug a ditch or fixed a fence.
Yeah.
It's hard work. So you come from it in a personal and natural way. Yeah. Not in a romantic way. So I get that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do, and I don't like getting on some type of high horse about it at all. Like,
I think it's just natural.
Yeah, but I really appreciate the fact that it's sort of few and far between, because it allows me to pick out things that haven't been painted to, to their nth degree. Yeah. There's a lot of things out there that are just ripe for painting that I haven't seen recently, at least, and that really touch on some of the stuff that really goes on out there. I'll give you one that I'm thinking about right now. Sure. That I'm trying to work into a painting is splices in fence lines. Like that's a huge part of ranching, is fixing fence lines. And
instead of running new wire,
exactly,
making it work, right?
Yeah, making it work. And the splice, to me, I guess this kind of like leads to something else about the work, is just taking these things that exist within the world, within the ranching world, and blowing them out to more more understandable and more ubiquitous concepts and things that people can relate to that have never ranched before, like a splice. We've all been broken, right? And all been mended in some way. You can tell, there's heartache, heartbreaks, you move on and you end up being fixed in some way. But I mean, that's super surface level, but like to take.
No, that's kind of deep. That's kind of deep analysis of life and from a rancher's point of view.
Right. So there's so many things out there that you can look at and say that it really connects to life and the human experience.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I think that's one of the reasons I really connect to your work, because you're a little bit
your
wired.
Background.
You're a little bit wired like me, even though I'm like, oh, I'm not going to work this hard, and then I go into the gallery business and I work as hard.
Yeah,
and it's funny because people think like you own a gallery, you just sit there behind a desk and take money. But if you come to Blue Rain, you see a lot of 1,000-pound sculptures.
Oh yeah, yep.
It takes guns and oh my gosh, to make that happen.
The bodybuilding background.
Oh, you better keep in shape. Yes, you better have your muscles in gear. The next thing I wanted to do is maybe cover some of my favorite images that you've recently brought into Blue Rain. And one of the first that I saw the other day that I really, really loved and was enthralled with is titled David. Tell me a little bit about that painting, David.
All right. So this one's not out there in the world yet, but I'll try to kind of condense it down. It's David Landreville is a friend of mine through the ranch, and he's a world-renowned farrier. A person that trims and shoes horses, except David is a barefoot trimmer. He doesn't use metal shoes at all. And that's something that, I was not familiar with. I thought that horses all had shoes on.
What's the reason for that? Is that because they're not in the city on the pavement? They're basically in the ranch?
Yeah, so I don't know enough to talk about it and not have someone later come along and be like, that was wrong. That was wrong. But I do believe that the shoes came about around the time of riding horses on semi-paved roads, hard surfaces.
Yeah.
And before that, horses, I mean, when you think, one of my favorite things about the way I was taught to ranch is that you keep things as natural as possible, right? Like things were functioning well before we got involved. So you have to ask yourself, how did a horse live without shoes? If they need shoes,
they never had shoes before. How did they live?
Exactly, and so it starts to, the common sense starts to kick in. Then when you start to talk to someone like David and other barefoot trimmers, and then learn about the hoof, it's like its own ecosystem that I could never even.
It's a very, very temperate ecosystem and dangerous for a horse.
Yes, so. Exactly. And there's a lot of opinions about it too. So I'm not gonna.
Delve into it too much, but David is a barefoot trimmer, and I was down in Texas at our good friend's ranch. They're managing it, and David came and he was trimming the horses, the ranch horses there, and I was watching him do it, and he is a master to the point where, like, when he's finished with the fourth hoof, he was doing this thing where he was stretching the horse's leg out and had his fingers under an inch above the ground, in between the hoof and the ground. And I asked him later, like the way he was stretching the leg, like, oh, could the horse not immediately put its foot down in that way? Like it would have to have pulled its foot forward. And he was like, oh no, like he could break my fingers right then. And he, through just 4 hooves, his handle with the horses, he's able to create this trust between them where he knows that's not going to happen. And he's a horse whisperer and a person that I respect greatly. And he had this moment with a horse, to get back to the painting. He had this moment with the horse when he was finished trimming it, where he was kneeling down and looking into its eyes, and it was looking down at him. And there was a real connection between them, a thankfulness and an appreciation between the two of them that just resonated strongly with me. I think I'm starting to look a lot like David. Looks like you have him with a white beard.
Yeah. And that's a new feature for David. So, yes.
Well, the other thing I liked about this painting is your shadowing. You have it right on.
Thank you.
And it's very strong. And it should be called David, or David with Trust or something, because it seems like the whole story.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's just a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
A few months ago, Blue Rain, through its print shop, asked you to produce a couple paintings. And one of them was called The Drifter. And the paintings were supposed to be around the balloon fiesta. So what I liked about Jill is his interpretation of what we were after. So what part of the balloon fiesta did you like about this painting?
So, I've been to the balloon fiesta, taking photos. That's where the other one comes from. But, when you start to think about how a hot air balloon functions, right? Like when you get up in the sky, there is no controls anymore besides up and down.
The wind.
Yeah, you're completely at the mercy of nature and the wind. And so it got me thinking about how, you're kind of on the wind, right? And then to personalize that, to humanize that feeling, I took it in a direction of somebody who has no direction, who is moving on, the drifter.
Maybe
right?
a little bit lost.
A little bit lost. Yeah, I've been there. And thankfully the wind took me in the right direction. I put a small balloon.
The subtle reference to the balloon.
Yes. There is a balloon on the painting, but it's a lapel pin.
What I love is the creativity. They give somebody an assignment, and then we let them have their artistic abilities take over. And it's amazing what happens when you have freedom like that. And boy, that was a really strong messaging on that. I like that.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the painting behind me.
Okay.
Loose ends.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
All right. Well, I have talked to you about this one before, and this one deals with the past and the future for me, or for us, my partner and I. When we're looking forward, we're looking towards a ranch. We want to get back into life. It was life-changing for both of us, and we don't go a day without thinking about how we could possibly get back to living that. We'd love to be able to do it again. Learn, we're not saying that we're professionals here. We have a little bit over a year under our belts, ranching, and it's more than a lifestyle. It's more than a career. It's
a way of life.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have so much to learn, but we want to get back to it, and we want to be the ones, at the steering wheel, and so to get there, we're having to step away from it for a while. I'm painting full time. Anna, my partner, is in a different career. And so we both feel that there's some unfinished business out there. The figure in this painting is walking away from an unfinished fence line. You can see the wire kind of like coiled, and he's got a roll in his hands, and it's not the job isn't finished. And that's how I feel about that.
It seems
life.
like also the vesture you're reminiscing to an older time as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that nostalgia is a big thing in my work. I don't like to. I mean, there's romanticism in the work, of course. I'm trying to pull that back and get more and more real and gritty with it. But there is romanticism. I'll be the first to admit that. But nostalgia isn't something that I'm really after because it's happening right now. Mm-hmm. This life is still being lived by people out there. Yeah, and people still. Like if you're referring to like the mode of dress, people are still dressing like this, and so
actually they are. I have friends in northern and southern Colorado that I can refer to that.
Yeah, the Californias. Yeah, in the white shirts.
Yes, with the suspenders.
Yep.
And it's not the normal suspenders that we have in a contemporary. It's more of the old style.
Yeah,
right, with the buttons,
buckaroo style.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. So. We sold our first painting the other day, and it was called Wade Through It. Let us know a little bit about that painting.
This one was a pretty emotional piece, and emotions by proxy, I should say. Like they weren't mine to own completely. A good friend and collector, over Thanksgiving break, I heard that he'd lost his sister abruptly. And we were gone on Thanksgiving break for over a week, and I heard about it early in the break, and by the time I got back to the studio, it was still weighing on me. Just this thought about this loss for him, and he's really an amazing guy, a really, really good person, and it was very abrupt, like I said, and unexpected, and that's how life goes, like we're constantly pitted against these things that, like we were talking about over lunch, you can't possibly anticipate, and we move through them. Through these obstacles and these.
No one's immune from tragedy, right?
Exactly. Thank you. Tragedy. Yeah. And what options are we left with? And maybe we'll touch on this later, but Fritz Scholder is a huge inspiration of mine, and the way that he is able to capture raw emotion in his use of figure, and also like leaving it within the boundaries of a piece. I've been studying his work and looking at everything I can see, everything I can find, and so this one I really do feel like it's a success.
Oh, it was. So it sold to one of our top clients who will not be named. You know who you are. But the text came back Fritz 2.0 because he got it right off the bat. I was like, my gosh. And he's really smart. So that's a pretty nice compliment there. The composition, how you, it does look, there's some semblance or similarities between a Fritz Scholder piece.
I can't say that there's another artist that I've seen that's able to capture emotion so vividly and rawly, and his use of composition and color too, joined. I haven't seen anybody that's done it as well as him.
Yeah, well, that was pretty close. That was pretty darn close.
That's too much. That's too much.
I know.
Yeah.
The tough one to help. Painting behind you. Now, how often do you work on paper versus panels or canvas?
After my solo show in July, I took a quick break from working on aluminum. That's what everything in the show had been, on aluminum. And it's such a concrete substrate. And I just kind of wanted to loosen up a little bit, work on something that wasn't as precious. Like working on a large aluminum panel, first off, they're expensive. And taking risks on something like that is a little difficult. So working on paper just always, I feel like for all artists, is like a way to kind of just spitball.
Yeah.
So this is, I haven't worked on a lot of paper.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of paper from what I've seen.
This was a successful one, I think, and deeply personal, dealing with difficult relationships, and the pride that goes into deciding if you're going to help someone or reach out and give them a hand up, or continue to, or walk away, or watch them suffer. I have my fair share of difficult relationships in my life, and you look at that person and they are down, whether or not they're admitting it or not. You look at them and say, you need help. And it's up to you. Like, I put you as the viewer of the painting in a position looking down on this person, and it's up to you if you're going to reach your hand out or walk away.
Well, I want our audience to know that now that you've heard a little about GL, that you realize the potential in this young man, and you have great vision, you have great emotion, and as you're practicing and developing your painting styles, we all need to be patient and watch this miracle happen.
Oh, come on.
It's going to be nice. I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good partnership. And this is a person that is dedicated to his craft and his field and is impassioned by the lifestyle of what he's projecting. I'd like to thank you for coming in today, Joe.
Thank you, Leroy.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
I'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe to Blue Rain Gallery or on YouTube or any of the platforms that you find podcasts. Also like to encourage you to visit BlueRainPrintShop.com. Bring art into your everyday life. Thank you, Gio.
Thank you, Leroy.